who made segregated schools.
Well, one could assume from the...
Don't assume. I doubt that the framers anticipated the question, but the truth is you don't know. And neither does anybody else. But you're going to find out.
Chief. Felix.
I'm sorry. I'm like,
That's all right.
Larry.
Well, brethren, we're all here now, so let's please get started. Now, we're asked here to reverse Plessy, in spite of a large body of law behind us on separate but equal. As John Davis reminds us, the Congress that framed the 14th Amendment also permitted segregated schools in Washington, D.C. So I'm inclined to affirm the lower court rulings.
I know my Southern compatriots, and I know there's a deep fear that desegregation will lead directly to the mixing of the races. I also know that the clear purpose of segregation laws is to discriminate. I hold no brief with those who would keep Negroes down, to exploit them as laborers and so on. But we must remember, the Negro race is out of slavery for only a short time. They still have a lot of catching up to do.
So, while a body of law has grown up to surround separate but equal with an aura of legitimacy, I find Mr. Marshall's argument persuasive. Racial classification is wrong.
Felix?
These cases present problems of such immense sensitivity and complexity. And I don't believe, frankly, that either side has really addressed them. They haven't come to grips with the solutions or consequences. Therefore,
You can't believe that.
wait, Felix is making a valid point. Therefore, I am not prepared to vote on these cases today. I recommend that we give both sides a chance to re-argue.
A chance? Felix, re-argue what? What could we possibly hear that is new? I mean, we all know what this is about.
The legal basis for reaching a decision.
It's not that complicated.
Well, for some people, nothing is complicated.
For some people, everything is.
Chief, I think it would be best not to vote today.
Well, we are at loggerheads. We will not vote this morning. Felix, we'll take your suggestion under advisement.
Great news, Mr. Bickle. We're ordering re-argument. Now, I need your help drafting some questions.
What sort of questions? For whom?
For both sides to form the basis for the rehearing. How are you progressing on the 14th Amendment that the framers had in mind?
It's slow going, sir.
What the hell are they after? Proof that the 14th Amendment was intended to outlaw segregation and that the court has the power to do it. How can you prove that?
They do ask how a remedy might be framed. It's a good sign.
Why do they need us to tell them how to do their job? Hell, we won the damn case, they just won't admit it.
Sir, this is a big job here. We're gonna need historians, constitutional scholars. My God, it's gonna cost a lot of money.
Sometimes I get so goddamn tired trying to save the white man's soul.
That was a long, terrible summer. We lined up dozens of scholars to try to make history serve our argument. I'd seldom seen Thurgood so down.
So after the war was over, to get back into the Union, all the Confederate states framed new constitutions, and not one has a single word about segregated schools.
Well, perhaps, Professor Kelly, they knew the 14th Amendment had outlawed Jim Crow.
Come on.
What?
They just took segregated schools for granted. This is a goddamn wild goose chase.
Excellent job, Alex.
It's clear, sir, that the framers of the 14th Amendment deliberately avoided being direct or explicit.
So you'd say they left it inconclusive?
It's 1866. There was almost no public effort to educate Negroes or whites. The framers never gave a thought to segregated schools one way or the other. But the language of the amendment is deliberately broad and elastic to allow for future conditions the framers could not anticipate.
So you're saying they left the door open for either the Congress or the court to act?
Sir, in good conscience, I'd say they left it a gray area in the Constitution. The court will have to interpret.
I don't know what I'm going to do. There's certainly be 4 firm votes to reverse Plessy. And maybe 4 to affirm. That leaves me.
Oh, Felix, you abhor segregation.
Don't you see? I cannot cast a deciding vote.
Why on earth not?
I'm the noisy little foreigner. The agnostic, the Jew. Some may choose as much as Negroes.
Felix, what are you saying?
It's what they say. Commie Jew. Alien radical.
Well, that was all in the past.
Go back to Austria.
Felix,
Dirty little...
stop this.
I cannot cast a deciding vote, Marion. There's already so much anger, so much hate crammed into this business. The explosion will blow us apart. It won't just shut down the public schools, it could destroy the court.
Surely it won't come to that.
If we order desegregation, dear heart, who will enforce it? The army? I love this country, Marion. And you know how much I love the court. I'm afraid. Hello. Yes, Hugo. When was this? I see. Yes, of course. Good night, Hugo. Fred Bunsen just had a heart attack. He's dead. Chief Earl Warren. My God, another politician.
So I said, I think it's your best choice. And he says, oh, no, don't ever put me on that witness stand. I'm my own worst enemy. Mr. Justice Frankfurter, it is a pleasure and a privilege, sir. With the consent of the brethren, I'm going to ask you, Hugo, as senior justice, if you will preside over this conference so that the new boy can get his feet wet without getting in over his head. Gentlemen, thank you.
Yes.
May I interrupt?
I'm finishing a memo.
I need some sound advice. Not on a point of law, on a decent place to eat.
Well, the Jockey Club is good. Chez Albert or Sans Souci. Try the Sans Souci first.
Will you be free to join me?
Why, yes. Yes, I would.
After the Civil War, the South used every means available to keep the ex-slaves poor, disenfranchised, and ignorant, as close to slavery as possible. School segregation was just a logical outgrowth of that general effort.
That's certainly true. But ladies and gentlemen, we must face the fact that we still have no persuasive evidence that school segregation was specifically prohibited by the 14th Amendment.
Just the same, although they were eroded in the decades following their adoption, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were clearly intended to establish equality.
So what you're really saying is that all we have to argue with at this point is broad purposes.
You've already done that.
Yes, but did they hear it?
Now, Your Honors, the framers of the 14th Amendment clearly intended it to establish equality. And we contend this court has, at certain times, recognized in the 14th Amendment that broad purpose. Now, to support that contention, I would like to review two groups of cases. First, the court's rulings on racial classification law.
Mr. Marshall, I don't believe we are troubled by our decisions in those cases.
Yes, sir, Mr. Justice Jackson.
The question is, and always has been, is it proper for the courts to overrule segregation laws? Is it right for this court to do that instead of
leaving it to Congress?
Exactly. I don't want to see you waste your time.
Well, in fact, in 1871, Congress passed a law specifically aimed at enforcing the 14th Amendment, saying that anyone using a state law to deprive a citizen of his rights...
I don't know what that act has to do with our problem. If you expect to prevail here, you must stick to what flows directly out of the 14th Amendment, not some subsequent congressional action.
Yes, sir. The only way my opponent can win here is to prove that the 14th Amendment had not been intended to cover schools. And they forfeited...
Mr. Marshall, if you should prevail, before you finish, you must address this. Have you developed a plan for how desegregation would take place?
Mr. Justice Frankfurter, we cannot intelligently, that is, put forth a single plan that would fit all situations.
Yes, but have you thought how much desegregation would be enough? Have you addressed the administrative problems? How much time would you allow for compliance? And who would you have to enforce it?
Well, those questions would require a little time to work out, perhaps a number of months.
Your Honors, frankly, it is also beyond our imagination to conceive how the court would implement a desegregation order. In, for instance, Clarendon County, South Carolina. There are 2,700 black students and only 300 white ones in that county. Now, if there were 27 Negro students and only 3 white ones in each and every classroom, would their lives be more serene? Ironically, in Clarendon County today, you have equal education. Not promised, not prophesied, but present. Now, shall it be thrown away on some fancied question of racial prestige? Now, contrary to Mr. Marshall's statement, the basic question is not whether the 14th Amendment was designed to grant equal protection to the Negro. Everyone acknowledges that. The question is whether separate facilities, if they are equal, satisfy that guarantee. And this court has ruled not once, but 7 times over the years in favor of the separate but equal doctrine. Now, somewhere, sometime, to every principle, there comes a moment of repose, a time when it has been so often announced, so confidently relied upon, so long continued, that it passes the limits of judicial disturbance. We feel strongly that the separate but equal doctrine has reached that moment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Charlie Houston booted me out of law school for such a fumbling, dim-witted display.
You got tomorrow. All the time you need.
It's not how much time I need. They've had almost 200 years to figure it out. Hell, there isn't anything I can tell them that they don't already know. Now, Your Honors, I got the feeling listening here yesterday that when you put a white child in a school with colored children, that child is going to fall apart. Now, we all know that this is not true. You know, same kids in South Carolina and Virginia, they play in the streets together. They play on the farms together. They go down the road together. And they separate to go to school. They come out of school, they play ball together. But they must be separated in school. There is some magic to it. Now, this court has said that black and white are entitled to vote together, to live in the same housing developments. You have said, let them attend the same universities, law schools, nursing schools. But if they attend the same elementary and high schools, the world will fall apart. Yesterday, Mr. Davis said that he feared the only thing Negroes were after was prestige, status. Exactly correct. We do want that, and why shouldn't we? Why should our being black deny us what others in this country take for granted? Your Honors, this country fought a tragic, bloody civil war over the question of our status, and not one, but 3 amendments to the Constitution were passed in the wake of that war to settle the question of our status once and for all. The 14th Amendment specifically promised equal status. It was the Negro Bill of Rights. What had been left out of our Constitution had finally been put in. Our otherwise extraordinary Constitution was finally complete. No longer would we be denied the right to be free, to take charge of our own lives, to become a proud and an aspiring people. But we all know that some states made a mockery of those sacred promises. And in 1896, the Supreme Court of the United States said, that's all right. the Plessy decision was and is a fraud. Nothing more than a license to discriminate, to perpetuate the inequalities and injustices of slavery. And now is the time for this court to say that is not what our Constitution stands for. The only way this court can decide for the defendants is to say Negroes are inferior to all other human beings. Now, nobody will stand up in this court and urge that openly. But for a court in this country today to deny that enforced racial segregation is a badge of inferiority, why, they are shutting their eyes as judges to what they must surely know as men. If this court denies our appeal, that is the message you will be sending to us and to the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. As you all know, Justice Black has been called to Alabama because of a family illness. Stand.
I believe the Constitution is a living document, and that the equality for the Negro has not been achieved under the separate but equal amendment. But I'm still convinced it can be.
The fact is, the Constitution says nothing, either about education or segregation. Now, I have no doubt that segregation is painful to Negroes. But how do we do right by the Negro without undermining the integrity of this court?
Precisely. Then there's the vexing problem of remedy, which would have to deal with the deep and possibly violent passion desegregation would be met with. I'm not ready to overturn.
Well, with Hugo's vote, I count 4 to reverse, 1 to affirm, and 3 undecided. Like all of you, I have given this a great deal of thought. I have concluded that the only honest way that segregation can be sustained is to insist that the Negro is inherently inferior. And that is unthinkable. So I believe the time has come to end segregation in the public schools. Now, given the deep feelings about this issue, this court must not act in an inflammatory way, but act it must. And it is my fondest hope that we can find a way to speak as a united court in one clear voice. Brethren, I hope that I will have the benefit of your ideas and wisdom in this endeavor.
So, it looks as if we're down to the question of remedy. How to enforce compliance.
I know you can't separate the principle from the remedy.
And a timetable is crucial. You can't expect people to change overnight.
Of course.
But you see, the problem is, once somebody has a right, he has it instantly.
Nothing you can do about that.
Well, I don't see how we can get around it.
Felix, let me get to the point. I'm going to draft an opinion on these cases.
I see.
You know how important it is to bring this court together. You know, four brethren will go with me simply because reversing Plessy is fair. I know I can't pull the others along unless they're convinced it's judicially viable.
Of course.
And they'll look for your assessment of that, Felix. I'm convinced at the heart of this matter is the problem you're fighting in your mind. Why not share some of it with us?
A memo, you mean?
I think it would help. And perhaps you could think creatively about the problem of timetable and framing a remedy. Let me know.
All right. Regarding a decree in the school segregation cases before the court, I offer these thoughts in the hope they may stimulate good thoughts in others. The equality of laws enshrined in the Constitution was made for an undefined and expanding future, and for a people gathered and to be gathered from many nations and many tongues. Thus, it is not a fixed formula. Law must respond to changes in men's feelings for what is right and what is just. When a deeply rooted state policy is wrong, the court does its duty if it reverses the direction of that policy so as to uproot it with all deliberate speed.
What in the hell does that mean? It means gradually. He borrowed that from Oliver Wendell Holmes. So, Bob, the whole ticker is bouncing back, is it?
Well, it's better, thank you. You know, Earl, it's very humbling coming face to face with one's mortality. Very astute move circulating Felix's memo. Well, a great justice once said that the majestic generalities of the Constitution have a content and significance that vary from age to age.
Benjamin Cardozo, right?
Yes.
I like what he said about a great principle growing into the promise of its logic. That someday all men are created equal might mean just that. Stan? Earl? I know it isn't easy deciding what's best for your country. I don't envy you. You're all alone on this one. I know. I wish you could come with us. I wish it were possible. Well,
The Honorable, the Chief Justice and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. Oyez, oyez, oyez. All persons having business before the Honorable, the Supreme Court of the United States are admonished to draw near and give their attention, for the court is now sitting. God save the United States and this honorable court.
I have for announcement the judgment and opinion of the court in number 1. Oliver Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka. We cannot turn the clock back to 1868 when the 14th Amendment was adopted, or even to 1896 when Plessy versus Ferguson was written. Today, education is perhaps the most important function of state and local governments. In these days, it is doubtful that any child may reasonably be expected to succeed in life if he is denied the opportunity of an education. Such an opportunity, where the state has undertaken to provide it, is a right which must be made available to all on equal terms. Does segregation of children in public schools solely on the basis of race deprive the children of the minority group of educational opportunities? We believe it does. To separate Negro children from others of similar age and qualifications solely because of their race generates a feeling of inferiority as to their status in the community, which may affect their hearts and minds in a way unlikely ever to be undone. Any language in Plessy versus Ferguson contrary to this finding is rejected. We conclude unanimously that in the field of public education, the doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal.
This is overdue, but nonetheless, we are happy with the result. There, all right?
Hello. Congratulations, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
You argued with skill and great passion, and obviously that carried the day.
You must be very grateful.
Grateful? No, sir, I'm happy. Very happy, but I'm not thanking anybody. Nobody gave us anything today. What we got is ours by right. Simple justice.
Well, Mr. Marshall,
Perhaps we'll meet again someday.
Very gracious of you to call.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. A little bit. Bob, I've got the feeling that tomorrow the real work begins. But tonight, I'm gonna have a couple. And then, I'm gonna have a couple more.
A year later, the court ordered public schools to desegregate with all deliberate speed. It took 10 years in Virginia and in South Carolina, too. Make no mistake, though, the Brown decision made all the difference in the world. For over 300 years, we had been either slaves or second-class citizens. Brown said, in effect, we were equal before the law. That's what we heard. That's what it said. The law was finally on our side.
Life.
that the longest movie I've ever seen.